All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Trevor Blazik. I will be covering the value of suffering in today's topic. And yeah, let's just get right into it here. So, value of suffering. Jordan Peterson, a well known psychologist around the world now. He studied at Harvard, he was a teacher for a while in Canada as well. He says life is suffering. I believe he gets this from the psychologist niche. And it's against popular belief to believe that there is extreme value in suffering. When you're going through it, it kind of stinks, and we all know it's not the best time to suffer, but there is an immense amount of value. And I chose this topic because when getting out of the military, I faced quite a bit of suffering. I didn't deal with that much throughout my life. Kind of had a I had a pretty good life all growing up, and then even in the military, we all kind of bonded together, got through all the suffering, and right when I was getting out, that's when it hit me the most, and that's where a lot of veterans get hit the most. So it's just something I want to go through. And real quick, the definition I want to cover of suffering is just life isn't going the way that you want it to go. So my main 3 points is suffering tells you what is wrong in life, allowing you to fix it. It's kind of a unique way our brain works. You become more empathetic as well, and there's a couple different benefits from emotional and physical suffering that I'd like to go through. So we'll just get right into it. Suffering tells you what's wrong in life and allowing you to fix it. So anxiety has kind of had an uptick in recent years. People are talking about it a little more, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. But we have to understand that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's quite literally our minds triggering it to us that there's something wrong here. We're not comfortable in this situation, essentially becoming more self conscious. And again, that's not a bad thing. The definition of anxiety is excessive apprehensiveness about real or perceived threats. You may believe that something is worse than it really is. And it just kind of tells you, hey, I haven't done this before. It could be taking a test, going to the gym, whatever it may be. It's, hey, I haven't done this before. I'm not comfortable. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you go to the gym for the first time, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. You might be a little anxious, but the only way to get past that is to get more comfortable in whatever situation you are in. So, anxiety tells you something that is wrong, and the popularity that it's gained over the years is seen as a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. My next point is you become more empathetic. So, I know for me, I started to understand that I'm not alone. That was a big thing. For some reason, a lot of us believe we're alone. I covered this in my last speech. You're not alone. You're not the first person to go through this tough time or subject. It's not just anxiety. That was my last point. So I kind of want to steer your brains in a little different direction. 80% of adults go through at least one trauma or adversity. Uh, According to Sapien Labs, I'll leave the link down in my description here below. And you kind of got to get out of that mind frame that whatever you're going through, you're not alone. So for me, I was going through a divorce at 23. And to me, that seemed like I was the only person to ever do it. When in reality, in the military and the army, that's quite common. It's about 50 to 60% of people are getting divorced within the army. And I thought I was alone for some reason. And it made me understand right when I got past the idea I'm not alone, started making me understand that everybody else suffers too. I'm not the only one going through such a hard time or suffering through such a hard time. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is the gap it bridges between people. So I talked about it a little bit earlier about going overseas and being in the army, and that wasn't even that hard. And it wasn't that hard because we had people to suffer along with. We had people to suffer along with us. So when we were overseas or whatever it may be, no one really mentioned the suffering going on. When you're at home and thinking about it, you start turning your gears and you start thinking about, oh man, this kind of stinks. I'm going through a tough time. But overseas, 115-degree weather, not much to do, fixing helicopters. We came together as a team, and it made it a lot easier. Another example I have written down here, whether you like it or not, is Trump. Not going into all of the details, but Trump got arrested. You may have seen that. He got arrested, had a mugshot, kind of went viral. And after you saw an uptick in the African American support for Donald Trump, And it's because they can now relate to Donald Trump. They believe that he was wrongly imprisoned and that they've been wrongly imprisoned for so many years. So now he's getting more support. It's bridging that gap between the two people, thus creating suffering, a thus creating a value from suffering. So you become more empathetic, and it's that's almost an understatement. You become extremely empathetic when you start suffering and realizing you're not the only one. My next point is the benefits of emotional and physical suffering. So you have to distinguish the difference. Physical suffering, simply going to the gym, doing something hard, physically taxing, taking a run, whatever it may be. And the ADAA, Anxiety and Depression Association of America, says that even a 10-minute walk can be as beneficial as a 45-minute exercise routine when facing depression. So they've done a study. People that are walking seem to have depression lifted off their shoulders. So, on top of that, when you're going to the gym, there is a sense of accomplishment. When you go there, you're anxious, of course. You have to get over that little anxious anxiety in your head. And by the time you get out of the gym, you feel accomplished. You feel like you've done something. And it goes on to my next point, improving your resilience. So, when you go through something so difficult, this is exactly what happened to me. I went through a difficult time transitioning, like I said. And now that I'm out of it, it's been a couple years since, 2 or 3 years, 2 years since. I feel like I could just take on the world now. It's quite unbelievable. If you saw me 2 years ago, I was a mess. I didn't really know what to do, sleeping all day, barely going to the gym, not doing much, barely taking care of myself, not dieting right. There was a plethora of issues that I had, and I was just suffering, and my family was worried. Everybody was worried. But now on the other side, my brother the other day said that I'm the best that I have been in my whole life, and that's because of my suffering. If I have never suffered, I wouldn't be where I am today. And then it gets you to realize, no, I got through that. I could get through this, and that's kind of what helped me bridge the gap over my last sprout of suffering. I went overseas and I came back and I did that. Why can't I not just transition out of the army? Why can't I just go back into society? And it's a lot harder than what I'm just saying, of course, but that's kind of the mindset that I had is I did this before. I went through adversity. I faced it. I suffered before. I could do it again. And all of the great things that came from overseas, I could get more great things right now from what I'm doing right now. So there's benefits to both emotional and physical suffering. Don't think of just suffering. Um, there's benefits to both. So that's my last point. And just to recap here, suffering provides value. It's just very hard to see it when you're going through it. Um, and you could see it when you see other people suffering and you're trying to help. It's hard for them to see the light. It is. And that's when that empathy comes in. You're like, "Oh, I've done this before. I understand. It's hard to do this." You may not understand what I'm saying now, but hopefully this little knowledge nugget that I'm leaving in your head for the future, you could take on 3 months now down from the 3 months from the line or from now, you could see that this is a important piece of information you can use. So my main points are suffering tells you what's wrong with your life, anxiety. It's incredible what our brain does. You just got to listen to it the right way. Through suffering, you become more empathetic. And lastly, suffering physically and emotionally are different, but physical can increase your mood. Emotionally, it takes a little more time. It's that almost delayed gratification. You got to wait and wait and wait, but you do see the value in the end. And I would like to leave you with a quote. I've been reading Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychotherapist in the Holocaust concentration camps. So he was in the Holocaust, took him to the concentration camps, and then they asked him to do some therapy for the people he was working with within the camps. And he says suffering is not always a pathological phenomena. Rather than being a symptom of neurosis, suffering may be a human achievement. So that is my speech on suffering. I hope you got some value from it. I hope I could help you out. And thank you for listening. I'll catch y'all next time.